My name is Sharon Bhagwan Rolls. I'm currently the Executive Director of FemLINKPACIFIC. This is a position I have held since 2008. Initially, I was part of the management collective that founded the organization. And so from about 2000 till 2007, I was the volunteer coordinator of the organization. So now my work is very much about FemLINKPACIFIC and the work that we do in Fiji, in Solomons, Bougainville, Papua New Guinea, and Tonga. My key areas of work are media, communications, policy advocacy, from the local definitely to the global. Well, I actually started as the coordinator because initially FemLINKPACIFIC was a volunteer-based organization, and when we first started, we really only thought about the production of media, that we wanted to produce media about different issues, obviously linked to women, peace and security. So initially we had a very big kind of media plan. And we started, our very first community video was called Not Just Sweet Talk in 2001. And that was the start of our community media process. And as we went out producing other community videos, the remainder of our community videos, developing our community media process, which was about linking to the women leaders in the communities, having them identify women to tell their stories, based on the different themes. We started to realize that there wasn't a rural network per se, that it was only when we were going into the communities, producing, discussing the productions with the women, and then going back and replaying the videos, that women were wanting to be organized. There was a need for this organizing. And then, of course, realizing that you can't be everywhere. So after we set up the Suitcase Radio in 2004, we organized, the Young Women's Program, the activities. We had a core group of young women from the schoolgirls and the monthly broadcasts. And then as we started to take the radio out in 2005 onwards to test the rural programming, we developed this community media process again based on the videos, that we bring the women together, they tell their stories, they discuss their issues, and then these are related through or relayed through the broadcasts. And that our production process was very much about producing the radio programs, and we became this kind of caravan of community radio with the Suitcase Radio. We literally would pack up and take the stories to the next town. But once again, the need to have women, because then it was, when are we going back? We take these stories, what are we going to do about this? So from about 2006 onwards, as we were developing the Generation Next project to keep the radio running in Suva, we started to reach out through other networks to see who could be our correspondents. So we started with a team of volunteer correspondents through partner organizations. That's how we met Andi Vasu, our association with Friends, and just starting to tap into who was out there. As a result of having these correspondents, I kept being reminded, particularly with the work in the North, you have to be here. You're collecting the stories, but you need to be here to talk to the women. So we started these very small kind of meetings that were really in the communities to document the stories. But then it just grew into this fact that we needed to sustain the network, that the correspondents were very important women as leaders themselves, and how could we support their leadership. So the whole community media network that we have now in Fiji and replicated in Bougainville, in Solomons and Tonga, with, through the 1325 project, and now the GPAC network, has really evolved from a community media process, and recognizing that community media activism isn't about going, taking the story and leaving, but how do you follow the stories through? How do you build relationships? And how do you, using the values of 1325, promote the participation of women, promote the leadership, the documentation is key as far as the storytelling, but also the evidence to promote women's participation. So I think, what started as women's media initiatives and the need to produce is, for me, has been this discovery of community media as that process, community media activism within, and obviously the linkages to communication rights, the policy advocacy, which I'd always been in tune with, but to be able to see that it wasn't just about me as that lone producer back in 2001, but to have this team of producers, correspondents, conveners across Fiji, and in partnership with regional organizations as well. I think the most significant change for us has been our partnership through the Fiji Women's Forum in the Fiji context, and also our work at the regional level around the Regional Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, as well as the Conflict Prevention Human Security Framework. So at two levels, in sense, it's all quite connected, because in 2012 we kind of came of age within the women's rights movement here as a co-convener of the Women's Forum. And that in 2013 and 2014, the whole political process in Fiji, the lead up back to elections this year, hasn't been an arduous task. We didn't have to think about how we're going to organize who are the women, because we had this existing relationship in Fiji through our rural networks and through the conveners and correspondents being those linkages and leaders within the community. So we could in fact keep doing the work, and all we needed to do was just make sure the information and communication started to flow around political issues. So for 2013, the most significant moment was definitely at the beginning of the year, where after the whole constitution making process, we no longer had the People's Constitution, but we were able to stage a simulcast. We were able to bring the issues of the Fiji Women's Forum back into public media spaces, but not from us in Suva. We worked with our Nandi network, because they had been very active through the Women's Forum and in mobilizing as well. So being able to do those kinds of activities, I think, to me, every moment is significant. The fact that we have been demonstrating that we have a rural network, it's viable, it's active, it's alive, it reflects the women, that is really significant. And I mean, at the regional level, the ongoing work through GPAC, and to be able to continue to raise issues within regional intergovernmental forums, and then beyond into the UN processes. I'll talk about within FemLink. I mean, obviously one of the things that I'm very proud of is that through the Generation Next project, we've seen a participation of young women who have come in as volunteers and grown up into the network and are taking responsibilities, not just at our Suva Community Media Center, but also at our Lambasa Community Media Center. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we hadn't invested in young women and been able to give both the organization and young women an opportunity to share. We have one of the very original Generation Next members now as a member of our Tavua network, leading the network, that relationship. And the kinds of relationships that we almost, in a sense, met in passing as we would go and engage with women leaders, whether it's, Losana in Nandi or Pauline in Nosori, or continuing to engage and support the seniors in Ba. I think that's that kind of growth and development, because each of them are growing and developing in their own right as leaders. And that we have developed not just a suitcase radio project, but FemLINKPACIFIC in Fiji has a community radio network led by women, and that includes women of all diversities. I think the fact that we've persisted, I mean, both at the regional level and at the national level, even at the local level, that we have continued to be that link between women and and decision makers, whether it's in local governance structures, whether it's in the government bureaucracy, whether it's through dialogue processes at the national level in Fiji, or with regional intergovernmental organizations from the Pacific Islands Forum, and more recently to the Melanesian Spearhead Group, and even, tapping into the Pacific Islands Development Forum. So I think it's that we are we're a link. We're recognized for what we do and the information that we collect, analyze, and share. I think also one of our key partners are the media organizations. And if you look at the way in which the Close-Up program in 2013 reflected the issues of women and water, but also was able to communicate the role of community media in bringing women together and women talking about this issue on the radio, I think that's really important, because the media organizations don't have the resources to be out there. They don't necessarily have the editorial agenda, and we're not going to try and change whatever their autonomy is to organize themselves. But we're here as FemLink to be that bridge between women, the issues, and the media. So, to go back to one of your initial questions, I think one of the other significant moments last year was definitely the Close-Up program, but also we had done an update from one of our monthly network meetings, and Tavor just keeps raising the issue of health. And to get the request from Pacific Beat Radio Australia saying, can we talk to your Tavor correspondent, and to have Fane featured on Pacific Beat was just huge. Otherwise it's just, they'll pick up the phone and talk to me. But the fact that we have these correspondents, and early in 2014, Ministry of Information, remembering that we had had a program on television about water, saying, we know your network addresses this issue, can we talk to some women in No Sorry? And being able to quickly mobilize through Pauline to say, we need 2 of our women to be talking about water. So it's those kinds of things, those kinds of linkages with partners who know that it may not happen tomorrow, next month, the next month, but over time, and particularly in this journey with the network, we have continued to demonstrate and grow at so many different levels, and deepen our work, and people know that they can turn to us because we bring these voices, these issues. There's never enough resources, and it's something that we recognize within FemLink, including at our board level, that we do have to keep fundraising all the time because we want to keep supporting this work. So it's things about resources. The donor agenda has to be, we still have to work towards donor priorities because there is the reliance on the bilaterals. There's still the reliance on regional funding pools like the Pacific Women Shaping Pacific Development didn't initially recognize or didn't initially reflect the work that we do, and that suddenly after about a year they say, okay, we can help you expand your Suva radio station. So it's having to be flexible within, and then talk to our network members to say, okay, we're going to require some flexibility because what we've been trying to do. The other thing also, of course, is not just looking outside to see what are the successes, but also being able to make time to work with the staff. And I think the more we're able to engage and create spaces. So some of the things that we've done internally to address the strengthening, the consolidation of the work that we do within the Suva Community Media Center are regular program meetings where we just take a day off and sit down and talk and discuss, and to make time for mentoring and engagement. But I mean, that is the role that one has to play as executive director, and to be able to provide the framework, to provide the space, and then say to the staff as well, this is just as much your responsibility as mine. So those are internal challenges because everyone's obviously at a different level, and everybody manages time differently or reflects or works. So a challenge for me is how do we strengthen that operational level? Externally, I think the reality of not just Fiji's political crisis, but also the realities of the situations that our partners work in Solomons, in Bougainville, and even in Tonga. We're not working in easy political spaces. So how do we keep the work going? How do we keep people engaged? We don't have the best regional communication infrastructure either. So those are some of the challenges. So definitely with face-to-face meetings, within the programs, I personally, and it's been emphasized that the role of the executive director is to also be there in the community with the networks, with the partners, and that's also an opportunity to engage and understand what's going on and to be an important link. So face-to-face meetings, utilizing the partners meeting, as I said, our program planning meetings. So just how we organize and connect the different work that we do, and that includes with our regional partners as well. I often say that just because we've got internet doesn't mean only emails are the way that you communicate. It's about picking up the phone and talking to people as well. So reminding particularly that kind of operational staff level that we have to also find ways to do this, to do our work and to engage, and to try and be as creative and innovative as possible all the time. 2015, if you look at the women's rights calendar for 2015, it's extremely significant. It's 20 years since the Beijing Platform for Action was adopted, so the whole Beijing Plus 20 review is moving towards a special General Assembly meeting in September 2015. I'm part of the global study, so we as FemLink are part of the global study on the 15 years of 1325. As an organization, we're 15 years old. There's the post-2015 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. There's a lot happening at the global level, and we want to continue to make it relevant and connected to the local level so that our networks from the local levels in Fiji, Solomons, Bougainville, Tonga are feeding into these processes and are being reflected. That means better organizing, upscaling, continuing to do what we do but do better at it. We certainly are reaffirming the participation of young women in our activities, not just because they're Gen Next or they're young women producers, but they have a substantive role to play in this 15 years. The next 15 years about FemLink is young women growing up as leaders within the organization as well. So it's about many different transitions. Obviously in Fiji, the return to parliamentary democracy, but also in Solomons, also in Tonga where there are elections, to keep track of that political process and look at ways in which women are strengthened in their political participation, not just as members of parliament who need to be supported, but in the relevant local governance structures as well. So it's really still about from the local to the global and utilizing the global standards, treaties, conventions, localizing them so that they really are part of what women are saying, and not doing more, but doing better, enhancing the quality, enhancing the level of content that we're creating, enriching the policy recommendations, and being more actively engaged in processes. That's